Crisis Radio. We want to take a look at the health care debate. I call your attention to the cover of Newsweek magazine, I believe still on such newsstands as it reaches now in the twilight of Newsweek, obviously a moribund institution, and with good reason when you look at the people who write for it. The case for pulling the plug on Granny, and again, they inveigh against the attempts to keep older people alive at what they claim to be the end of life. Well, whether it's the end of life or not is what you find out in the process. The Newsweek Malthusians and genocidalists there, too, I'm afraid there's no other word, want to deny that care. They want to have you go meekly into that bad night. That's Newsweek. Now, with the news magazine most associated with Obama, that had Obama on the cover more than any other, an obvious speaking tube of the Obama clique in the Democratic Party. How is it possible to say that if you raise questions about death boards, death panels, euthanasia, genocide, cost-cutting, and so forth, MedPAC on steroids, IMAC, Independent Medicare Advisory Council, cutting costs, the $500 billion being gouged out of Medicare. How is it that that's somehow racism? How is that paranoia and racism? There's obviously a great deal of very convincing evidence that this is indeed the intent. We've got the haggling going on now in the Baucus Caucus, the Senate Finance Committee, and you can see how they take it. They don't tackle it as a public health issue. They tackle it as a finance issue, and the infighting is going on. Now, Baucus, obedient to the Obama lockstep, says everything has got to be done in 2 weeks, and the Republicans are saying quite rightly, what's going to happen in 2 weeks? Why 2 weeks? Why not 3 weeks? Why not 1 week? What is the point of this? It's clear the Republicans are using delaying tactics for the reason that the more people learn about the Baucus-Obama plan, and it's clear that that's what it is, Obama embraces the Baucus plan, the less they like it. The Republicans in particular are scoring points on one of the weakest points, if not the weakest, in the Baucus-Obama plan, the gouging and looting of $500 billion, $500 billion to be gouged out of Medicare in the form of cuts over 10 years, $500 billion per year. This regards in particular Medicare Advantage, but not only. That's about 1/4 to 1/5 of it, but then there's all the rest of it. It will lead to a catastrophic weakening of the provisions of Medicare, which is why we say on this program, defend the heritage of the New Deal and the Great Society. Defend your economic rights under Medicare. Stop Obama and his genocidal cuts. Significantly, one insurance company began sending out mailings to older people pointing out what Obama was attempting to do under the cover of extending coverage and the clamor for reform and cutting costs. Obama was in doing a better job than any Republican could ever do in cutting Medicare, and the Obama regime has imposed a gag order on that insurance company to try to stop them from alerting senior citizens, Medicare recipients over 65, to this looting and robbery that's going on. So that's the crimes of Obama. On the Republican side, an interesting case of a woman who came forward, no insurance, no money, suffering from tumors, needed an operation within days, told by Congressman Eric Cantor, the House Republican whip and a genocidalist of a different stripe, that she should just go and appeal to some charities for help. So you can see the idea that the American population are supposed to become groveling paupers, happily accepting whatever largesse the rich and the elitists can allow to fall from their table, whatever crumbs might come their way. This focuses once again on the question, is health care a right? My big disagreement with Congressman Ron Paul. Dr. Tarpley refutes Dr. Paul on this one. Health care is a right. It has to be a right. The achieved level of economic activity is only possible thanks to longevity. Industrial society and advanced industrial society has made this possible. You've got to have people who live 70 to 80 years, otherwise you can't give them the training they need to be productive, and that means essentially the equivalent of a college degree and increasingly more than that. You've got to have that longevity, otherwise the process of training takes up so much of the working life of the individual that the returns are not accruing if death overtakes the person too early in life. That is the overarching social reason for this. So health care is not just a right, it's an imperative. It's got to be delivered. If the private sector were delivering it, that would be fine. The fact is they're not. That's where the issue begins. And, of course, we've had 40 years of reactionary Republican rule. 7 out of 10 presidents, reactionary Republicans, except for Carter, a catastrophe, and Clinton, at least a demi-catastrophe in his own right. So what is health care? It's a right. It's an imperative. Otherwise, what is it? It could be a privilege. Wait a minute. If it's a privilege, then some people can be denied it, right? It's like you don't get the ability to get a driver's license is not considered a basic civil right, even though for some it might seem so. That's considered a privilege. Health care goes into that category. It can be taken away from you legally. Or what else could it be? A commodity where you have to go into the so-called free market and take your chances, and if you get it, good for you, and if you don't get it, hats off to the free market. That's also totally unacceptable. Healthcare is a right, and beyond a right, an imperative. It's not a privilege, and it's not a commodity. Even in the court cases of the 19th to 20th centuries, we're told that labor is not a commodity. Well, healthcare is also, sure as hell, not a commodity. Now, one other point, the Afghanistan machinations of Obama, we're told that the anger in the Pentagon is building, that resentment of a very serious and threatening kind, building in the officer corps because of Obama's stalling on the McChrystal demand for an escalation of 40,000 troops. This goes back to the way in which McChrystal was installed in power and his predecessor gotten rid of. So at this point, we get the Najibullah Zazi case. Al-Qaeda comes to 33rd Avenue and Parsons Boulevard in Queens. But notice in that case, the imam there in Flushing, the FBI informant agent, was not charged. He can go home. Zazi stays in jail. How convenient for Obama with Afghanistan. Back in a minute.